Evening, everyone. Thursday edition of Getting Back to Zero. I'm excited for two reasons. One, we're going down to Naples, Florida tomorrow for just a long weekend with the in-laws to get them down there. So I'm going to be on the water and throwing a pole in the water. I don't care if I even bait my hook. It'll be fun. But I am very, very excited about a guest tonight that Kristina Dennis is in. And I heard her story the other day, and she's one of those guests I think everyone's going to get their wish, because if I can, and I know I'll fail miserably at this, but if I could, I just hope I shut up and just let her talk. She's that good. So you're in for a treat. Unbelievable story, and inspiration is the only word I can say. So anyways, I did real quick, after I was listening to Kristina's podcast the other day, I had a flashback. As a kid, I remember the very first book I ever read, and I Googled it and found it, and it was, I don't know if anyone recognizes this, The Carrot Seed. It was the very first book I ever read, and it's a children's book. It's real, but it's about a great moral lesson about a little kid who plants a carrot seed. No one said it would grow, but he stuck with it, watered it, weeded it, and finally he believed in himself, and it grew. So there's a great moral in it, but it was just kind of hearing, I don't know why Kristina's story made me think of the carrot seed, but regardless, so I got reunited with a book that I probably read 53 years ago, something like that. But I guess I should start by shutting up. So I'm just going to bring in Kristina. How are you doing? Welcome to Getting Back to Zero.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
And you owe me, I think, $6.95.
Okay.
For the book. I got a hard copy for my shelf and one for the grandbabies to destroy and color. So I got two. But hey, thank you so much. I'm going to hand this over to you real quick. But you know what? I've been learning in this recovery thing. I talked with about trauma and reasons why we drank. And of course, when I started this journey, I had a problem with beer. And as soon as I get rid of beer, my life is going to be perfect. And now everything about my life will be great. And I was a little wrong on that one. But I'm really learning about why we drink, because it was my coping skill. Now, I was crushed with anxiety my whole life, floored by it. It stole a decade of my life easily, where I couldn't even, and all I did was self-medicate. So I lost all coping skills, but coping with alcoholism because of trauma is a massive one. And I thought trauma was surviving a war, 9/11, a horrible accident, and it can be minute. So I want to get into some of that, but I just want to hear your story. So I'm going to shut up and tell us, just let her rip. And thanks for being here.
Oh, of course. And sure. I am in recovery. Yeah, I'm Kristina, and I'm an alcoholic, a recovering alcoholic. My sobriety date is May 6th, 1997. So I'm in my 24 and some months, my 25th year of sobriety. And I was born, and I'll make it quick. It's scary. It's scary when somebody starts up a story with where they were born.
Yeah, that's going to be a long night. Story. That's a lot of trauma if we're starting on that day.
Exactly. I was born on the island of Malta, and that is interesting because I had a mother and a father, and I had a younger sister who came 11 months after me, and there was an older brother and sister. And I was raised by these two people. The father was in the oil business, so we lived overseas. And there was a lot of mystery around it. I was the only child out of the family who wasn't born in the United States. And I was literally unwanted, and they made it incredibly clear. as strange as that may sound, the difference between the way they treated me and they treated my younger sister was vast, and it was apparent, and it ranged from emotional to physical to sexual abuse. And the woman who was raising me was mentally ill. She's schizophrenic or bipolar, I'm not sure, but she had treated all of her children pretty badly. There was a lot of, emotional abuse, a lot of abandonment, a lot of screaming, throwing away, a lot of vicious comments when you're in 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old. And when me and my sister were entering into our teenage years, we decided to take a big trip. That was the family. At that point, we had relocated to Anchorage, Alaska. And these remote places kind of play into it because of the isolation. And my father passed away on a vacation, which left me and my sister, who were the only two left at home, at the hands of this very mentally ill mother. And we ended up moving to Denver, Colorado, and we're close to my older brother. He was going to kind of take over the family, but the abuse escalated. And what I ended up finding out at the age of 16 was that they had all lied to me. I had been left at a mall. These were the kinds of things that my mother would do. She would take me someplace and leave me, and I wouldn't be able to find her. I would have to call on the phone. There was very, very twisted kind of emotional abuse. And, that time it was because I had went to the bathroom. I walked away. I didn't come back fast enough. And she took my little sister and they drove home. And so I was once again at my older brother's house and distraught and sad and angry. And I asked him, I said, I know she doesn't like any of her children. I realize she's mentally ill, because he had kind of helped me come to that understanding. I realize that she's really sick, but she's really, really mean to me. Like, what did I ever do to her? And he looked me in the eye and he said, it's because she's not your mother. She's your grandmother. And I took a few minutes to even be able to understand the words, because I was very, very young, 16 years old. And I said, well, then who is my mother? Like, confused. Was he telling me he was my father? Like, I really couldn't understand it. And he said, Michaelin, your mother, your sister, my older sister is really your mother. And as crazy as that sounds, and it was very, very traumatizing. It was very confusing. It also helped me have some answers, because I could not figure out why I was so specifically unwanted, like there was a major difference. And my mother figure, my grandmother, couldn't keep it together, and ended up asking me to leave at the age of 17. So I moved out. I started working. I was very, very hardworking, and that comes with when you don't have security. And you'll find that a lot of people who have maladaptive behaviors around alcohol are actually really great hard workers who really want to do well. And I, at 21, found alcohol because that was the legal age. And the first time I drank it, I had the phenomena of craving. And I literally thought, wow, where has this been my whole life? The next day I was salivating for it, because it was probably the first time that my nervous system had been made to be peaceful. I thought that it was the most amazing thing. And I realized very quickly into my drinking career that I had a problem. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't want to admit it. So I drank alcoholically, and I'm grateful for those years, because I didn't have any place to bring all of this emotion and this pain, as per normal, a child that is unwanted and unloved will grow up wanting everybody they meet to love them and want them. And that was part of my MO. I was involved with older men. I was involved with situations in which I worked 3 times harder than the next person to get the same thing. I was always suffering and always chasing that elusive feeling that I felt the first time. So at 27, I had thrown a party around May 5th, and it was actually May 4th and 5th that we were going to do it. And for the first time ever, I woke up the next day and started drinking again. The anxiety was so massive. And I have to say this, my solution of alcohol stopped working because it was my solution for a long time. And that first day it stopped working, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't want to be suicidal, but I knew I was in trouble because I didn't know how to live life on life's terms. And for whatever reason, I believe it's the grace of God, I walked into my employer office and said I had a drinking problem. I have a drinking problem. I had never heard of AA. I had never heard of recovery. My grandparents had been fanatic Christians. They had been teetotalers. I had never been around it. So all I thought was that I'm bad. I am such a bad person. And when I walked into an outpatient rehab in Denver, Colorado, a person told me her story. And it was the first time I ever heard someone who understood what it was like when I drank. And she told me, "We'll get you well." And I had blind faith, and I didn't understand how I was going to live life on life's terms. I didn't know how I was going to live life without my anesthesia. It was incredibly painful for me. At that point, I was an orphan, and I didn't have any kind of basis of validation for myself. But she is the one who brought me in. She was my angel, my Eskimo, as they say. And I started to attend AA meetings. I started to attend 12-step groups, and I started to kind of piece back, and mend who I was.
Do you think your lack of preconceived notion about what sobriety or recovery would be was a blessing? Because so many people, you're telling my story, which is just uncanny. The morning, I remember that morning when it didn't work. But I thought I knew what sobriety was, and it sure as hell didn't look fun. It looked boring. It looked like I thought of it as a red light versus a green light, and I now see sobriety as a green light for my life versus just everything stops, fun, dreams, anything.
Well, drinking.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, drinking had kind of stopped being fun for me in that last year. Drinking was kind of throwing caution to the wind and not knowing where I was going to wake up. Drinking looked like me trying to control drinks. Oh, I'll drink water in between. Oh, I didn't have a full stomach. Oh, it was this. And it felt awful whenever the effects were off in the morning and I had to go to work. So my whole life was wrapped up in it. And that was the part that was really scary for me. But having a preconceived idea what sobriety meant, no, I didn't even know that there were people who drank alcoholically. To me, alcoholism meant Skid Row. It didn't mean a 27-year-old girl who was doing pretty well at her job. But I'm living proof that you don't have to lose everything to make the decision to quit. You don't have to have a DUI. You don't have to lose your job. You don't have to lose your marriage. You can make a decision. And I feel so grateful that I was introduced to a way of life. And you're right, it's expansion. It's not constriction. Yes, I had to give up one thing so I could have everything. But if I didn't give up that one thing, I wouldn't have had anything.
I never got the DUI. I was a day away, an exit away. You have better odds of winning the lottery than you do of not how I got away from things. But I think my rock bottom happened after I quit drinking, and because suddenly all the crap of my life continued, but now the only thing that ever gave me any relief from it was taken away from me. And now I had to, so I was actually my bottom was after I quit, and
Absolutely.
I
And
thought, well, I thought, the heck with this. I don't.
right.
My anxiety's coming back. I don't have my magical pill. I
Right.
don't want to live this way.
Well, and it's why I always encourage everybody, get with somebody who is living this life with you. It does get better. And for me, the emotional terror that I was keeping at bay with the alcoholism did show back up. And I had to fight through a spiritual awakening to get myself to a place where I had help. It was the first place, they say a lot in the rooms or in the groups, because that's the nice thing. There's more than one way to get sober these days. You'll say, let us love you until you love yourself. And I was desperate enough to believe them. And I found that to happen in my life. As I said, I hadn't lost my job, but within a year, I was in another state that was totally orchestrated by a higher source. I was attending meetings. I had, women's meetings. I was meeting people that could show me how to live. I was meeting mothers who show me what a mother would have done. And a lot of mothers do. And I started to realize that I had some value, some intrinsic value because I existed. I was very, very much into service. And I would not tell anybody that that first year was easy, but I would say that there were other times that I had some rough times in sobriety. And getting connected with a group of people is one of the easiest ways to ensure that you can walk through those hard times. Because if you have a problem and you pick up, now you have two problems. And that kind of made sense to me. We don't even get, it takes us 18 months of sobriety to have access to 50% of our neurotransmitters that we had before. So it takes some time to get back up on your feet and to be thinking. And if there's wreckage, get help, get a lot of help.
Did you not realize there was a lot of wreckage? I was in your early recovery. Did you suddenly, things that you thought were normal uh, suddenly
Mhm.
now I had resentments because I didn't realize there was anything to resent because that was just my norm. So did you?
Not at a very conscious level, I understood that, but it wasn't until I had my son did that really hit me about the trauma that I had survived. It was me holding this little innocent baby and feeling this incredible amount of love, and I knew that that had not been the case around my birth. I said at the beginning I was born in Malta, and that is because my grandparents, my mother's parents lived in Tripoli, Libya, and she was very pregnant with me when she came home from college. She was a college student, and they kept saying, you're pregnant, you're pregnant. She kept denying it until she was about 8.5 months pregnant. And she and my grandmother went to the island of Malta to have me so that I wouldn't be born in Libya because of the Gaddafi was
Right.
thing. Well, Gaddafi went into power September 1st. My birthday's August 31st. My mother left within 2 days, from what I understand, and my grandmother couldn't get me back into the country for almost 30 days. So there was a lot of trauma before I even was conscious. There's a wonderful book called The Body Keeps the Score. And when you read about the trauma and what it does to a body, not only emotionally, but even physically, I start to look at all of us who have made it to the other side into this beautiful expansion of sobriety. And I think, how the heck do we even survive it? Honestly. And so at
See, I would have thought that trauma is only if you, and I know we block it, but at too young of an age,
Mhm.
getting spanked is well, not a newborn, but you know what I'm saying, something that happened. I don't remember that, so I
Mhm.
wouldn't think that that would be something that would cause trauma.
Oh yeah, the DNA, the trauma in your DNA will be there. In fact, they can trace it back 7 generations,
Oh,
which
really?
is
Wow.
interesting. It's very interesting. And whether you're biblical or not, you can even see some of that generational sin that they talked about. I believe that they're talking about this. They are starting to really see, even with alcoholism, there are 5 generations in every family that shows a pattern. And the world does not know enough about it, which is why having this show is so important, because we need to be able to talk about it and take the shame away from it, take the guilt out of it, help people get help faster and sooner than, after the DWI. Help them now understand that it's not because we're bad people. It's not because we want to behave like this. It is the way our brain reacts to alcohol. And it is more than true with me. So at 7 years of sobriety, I had my son, and I really had to walk through some very, very difficult grieving, which is what is the word that I think that you were talking about when you said, you got sober and then within a couple of months you were grieving. It is a loss when you lose your friends. It is a loss when you lose your lifestyle. And it's very, very it's very, very frenzied at first, and then it gets very, very quiet. And that's exactly when feelings start showing
Right,
up.
right. Yeah, exactly.
So,
It's, someone said the pink cloud
mhm,
is, I don't know if this is a lousy term, but the placebo to get us through, to
mhm,
give us a feeling that, hey, sobriety can be good. It gives us a placebo to give us hope to stick with it. I don't know how true that is, but it sure got me excited about, so that when the pink cloud wore off or dwindled or whatever you want to say, I was, if it had worn off on day two,
we struggled.
I would have struggled.
Mhm.
But it gave me enough. That pink cloud gave me enough time to build up resilience, to build up an understanding, to build up the self worth and the confidence that this actually is something I want to stick with.
Right, and the neurotransmitters, just even physicality of it. I'm an interventionist, and so a lot of times when dealing with families, there's a big question of, well, they haven't drank for 30 days. How come they can't make this decision? Why is it hard? And I always explain the neurobiology of alcohol. It is a legal drug, but it's still the most dangerous drug. Still, more people die from withdrawing from alcohol than they do from other drugs. It just doesn't have the same amount of attention. There is not a big warning label all over it, but I really feel like there should be. And I'm not saying let's take away the drink from the world, because I know prohibition doesn't work, but it is not a sinless action. It does a lot to your body and it does a lot to your brain.
So at 7 years when your son was born,
Mhm.
you obviously hadn't healed
No,
trauma.
no,
So
takes so much
how
time.
how did you find how did you discover your trauma,
Mhm.
and how did you even begin that journey? Because it
Well,
sounds like you're still almost the term dry drunk.
no, I wouldn't call myself a dry drunk, not at all. I had a lot of peace, and I tell people in their first 2 to 3 years, enjoy the peace, because things will come up and you will eventually be able to face something that might be still in there. You know, get a day at a time, get it month at a time. Take your time enjoying the relief that you have right now, and when you're ready, it will start to show up and you'll need to deal with it. It was the level of the trauma that showed up. And I will tell you what my next biggest bottom was, is that my son was diagnosed with severe autism at 2 years, 18 months. And I'll tell you, I was pretty angry about that situation. But because he needed a mother who was healed, because he needed a mother who didn't need him to be okay for her to be okay, I had to go for it. And so the last 15 years have been about me working my tail off to be the mom that he needed me to be.
How did you, besides realizing you needed to do that, how did you do that, or start?
Absolutely. So, groups, I attended a COA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics. It's a wonderful 12-step group. Do not have to have an alcoholic parent to qualify. We end up dealing with a lot of the things that are hurt. I did therapy. I worked with a coach. I took workshops. I worked at it. And I also had this group of people, because that was the other thing that happened. It was very similar to when I got sober. I had 5 baby showers before my son came. And I can tell you that not one of those people is in my life today. And so, like alcoholism with autism, the other A, I really had to figure out who was going to be in my corner and be with me. And you know who it was? People I had gotten sober with. It wasn't my work friends. It wasn't my family. I've already explained why. It wasn't my husband's family. It was my work. It was my friends in the program, my people who had gotten sober that stood up and showed up for me.
And that I I I think that what I see is when I went through my anxiety and I was crushed with it. I
Mm,
dealt with a family doctor, great guy, fantastic. Gave me advice on stuff, what to do, talked about this and that. And I said, well, what do you do when you're in a social situation? And he said, well, I don't know. I've never, I don't have panic attacks. And I
mm,
thought, well, why am I talking to you about it? You don't even understand,
exactly. You've got to get
and so his degrees on the wall were great, but it was when I talked to, I don't even know who, someone saying, oh yeah, God, I have them too. And I
yes,
heard the words me too, which are
right.
the two greatest words in recovery for me.
Mhm.
I heard me too, and it was like, you're kidding me. I'm
Yeah.
not alone. And
No.
that's where that was the degrees and what he gave me and the medical. There was that's, but
Mhm.
that didn't, the magic happened when I found
Peer-to-peer support.
some peer support.
Right.
And I think same thing with alcohol abuse. And I'm assuming same thing with trauma.
Exactly, exactly. There's definitely a place for professionals in trauma recovery, and I say go slow, but for me, I really took it as mind, body, and soul, approach. So I did work on my body. I did treat myself like I treated my son. I had to learn how to heal my nervous system because I had to be his rock, and that meant learning to say no instead of yes every time. That meant letting the party go on without me. That meant sometimes we don't do Thanksgiving like you do it. That meant we don't do Christmas like you do it. For his birthday, we're going to do it this way. And I had to get really good and solid about who I was and what my worth was because I wasn't going to be able to get it from anywhere else. I am a recovering codependent, and this is actually one of the areas in which I have an expertise, which is teaching people to no longer need outside validation in order for them to be okay. And unless we get that in our childhood, unless we are told that we have value, regardless of what we do, we don't know that. And my life was incredibly transactional. Even in 7 years of sobriety, I was still fixing everything for everyone because I felt like that was my worth. And when my son came along and his needs were increased immediately, because I'm not even sure having a second baby would have done it. It was the fact that he needed me to become solid, and I wasn't going to be able to find it with everybody else, from anybody else outside of people who had been through it, that I buckled down and did it.
How how imperative was his situation to your recovery? Was that a gift that I,
Yeah.
I hate to say that
No, it's okay. He's a
but
gift.
you know what I'm saying. It was that something that was
Well,
necessary to.
yes, and absolutely. To have the level of understanding that I have, to have the level of peace, I needed to swing this much, this way. And I will tell you, just like with alcoholism, it was that surrendering and firing myself as the CEO of his life and of my own life. It was the ability to say, I'm going to stay right sized and teachable. It was, hopefully I would have gotten to some of it before. I think a lot of people are able to go through life doing good deeds and having the peace and having, it be okay. There are a lot of people who maybe don't go through these kind of painful situations until later in life or never. And I'm not here to say, oh, you have to go unpack all of your trauma in order to have a freer life. I'm just saying I had to. And my nervous system needed to be healed. And that meant uncovering, discovering, and discarding. That meant treating my body like I treated his, like taking care of myself. That meant saying no, like I said, many, many times. That meant writing letters to, my family members that were never going to read them because I was never going to mail them, but allowing me to close the loop on that trauma or on that abuse, allowing me to speak up for myself and then heal it by grieving it.
You said at the beginning something that hit me, that when you had that first drink, you said it settled your nerves. However you said it, if you can remember the words, but it was like your nerves were escalated. And I
Hmm.
wonder if that
Didn't
I,
know.
was I the same way, because suddenly alcohol allowed me to just. So what explain what you were talking about, because that makes me think, yeah, that's me.
Well, you know how in The Wizard of Oz it's black and white until they get to that place,
Right.
and then it all of a sudden becomes color? That's what alcohol did for me. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I didn't know that I could be peaceful. I kept it all tightly wound in, this little body, working, working, working. I was in the restaurant business, worked double shifts, working, 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 always stressed out, always, everything was a fight. I didn't know that I could have peace. I didn't know it. I didn't even know what it would feel like because I had never.
But why were you strung so high? Why am I strung so high? Is that a genetic thing? Is that because of trauma? Is that
I
just how we are?
I think it's both. I do. Our personalities, I think, are set from our childhood or from our birth, that we have certain personalities. And then, if I believe in that trauma and the generations, and I think that now I have history on both my father and my mother's side, I can kind of see exactly how I was made, and the time I was made and the time I was in the womb and the stress that was happening. And I know, and we know, like I said, the body keeps the score. These scientists know that that causes stress, that causes trauma. It's called epigenetics. It's when your actual genetic code changes because of the trauma that you went through. And we as a country, if this is United States or any other country, you can kind of look at big traumas like the Depression, World War II, the Holocaust. You can actually see it in different types of people, exactly how alcoholism was introduced as a way to distract the family from something that was impossible to understand, like war. And then it was passed along because of the genetic code. And now, for you and for me, we're kind of at the bottom of that diamond shape. It's very interesting if you can pull back and look at 5 generation past, you can see how it started with one person and then it went out, lots of uncles and aunts, and then now it comes down to the ending. And my son will never see me drunk. He has never seen me drunk. He has never seen me inebriated. He has never seen me not know where my car is or not be able to take care of him. And so a lot of people would tell me, well, you had every reason because we didn't sleep for 10 years. No, this show isn't about autism, but we
No,
really
it's just about
feel it.
us. It's about whatever.
And you can look at a brain of a special needs mom and look at a brain of a soldier, and the PTSD, the actual micro tears within our brain, will be the same. And so you cannot assume just because of what somebody looks like or what they have or what you believe was their childhood that they didn't go through trauma. 80% of people go through trauma, and approximately 80% go through big trauma with a big T, and about 90 to 95 go through little trauma. So every one of us has something in our childhood or in our adult life that has traumatized us and that we need to let go of.
I just look at, when my wife, who is she's a beer drinker, but she doesn't have a problem.
Mhm.
Take it or leave it. But when she drank the first time, she probably said, "Yeah, great, whatever." When I drank the first time, it was, I could not believe what I got from it. I could it just fixed everything.
It's the technical,
The
right?
impact was huge for me
Mhm.
versus for my wife. It was kind of, whatever.
Right.
So there's something different because now it was, I gotta have this.
Well,
That's,
I have a statistic for you. 50% of active alcoholics or recovering alcoholics have the gene. So that's why I say it's a little bit of both. When you know about what alcohol does to the brain, when you realize it's the dopamine hit is bigger than sex, drugs, food, friendship, job accomplishment, it is the biggest dopamine hit. When you get explained a little bit about the science, whoa, it's pretty amazing that any of us, drink long enough, you will become addicted to it. So the difference between me and maybe your wife is that once I figured out this was a shortcut, that this was an efficient way for me to breathe, I was going to get it every single day, regardless.
grieving. And I didn't come up with this, but it was like, wow, it's true. I grieved the loss of alcohol, and it wasn't, yeah, alcohol did a lot of bad things to me,
Right.
but I'll be honest with you, we had some great times together.
Yes, of
Me
course.
and alcohol got me through a lot.
Of course.
Now the friendship soured at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and we had this we got to dissolve this relationship. It's not working anymore, but it
Yeah.
sure did at first.
Yeah. I told you it was my solution. It was literally my solution, and I am grateful that I found it, and I'm even grateful that I drink alcoholically because, God brought me to AA, and AA brought me back to God, and now I belong to several groups. I mean, it's my business. I love helping others, and when I am in these other groups, I now feel that peace that I wanted when I had that drink. I can feel it just inside myself, just as the way I am. And that feels like power. That feels amazing.
So the person that's hearing this and says, "Oh wow, I bet I have some trauma,"
Mhm.
but like same thing with me. I lived a howdy doody life. I was very fortunate, but that says, "Wow, this makes sense to me. How do I find my trauma?
Right.
Do I even want? So do I even want to? Because my whatever, maybe my brain is like, no, keep that door shut, and it's
Mhm.
hiding it from me."
Well, and I work with people that we don't need to know all the specifics, but what we always need to do is work with somebody, like you said, whether it's a sponsor, if you're in the 12-step route, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a coach. What anybody needs to do is look at the damage their behaviors are causing them today and look at the problem areas that they have. And then we go back and we analyze and walk through all the relationships from your original family. And you start to see some of the belief systems, because a lot of us don't even question them, that are incorrect or not helpful. I had a client who was talking about a trauma that she had around 8 years old. And she said, well, I don't know. Maybe I was just looking for attention. And I said, well, what is wrong with wanting attention when you're 8 years old?
Mhm.
Like, that's the belief system that we need to question. Now, your parents were probably hurt children too, and that's why that they did what they did. But if you don't have to have a big trauma, all right? You don't have to. A lot of sex abuse survivors go through this because our subconscious has blocked out details. And I always say you don't have to go looking for that to treat it. What you need to do is treat it, and you know what the solution always is: self-love, self-acceptance. That's always the solution. So we can do that without you having specific memories.
Yeah, I know the human body's a miracle, and if it's hiding something, it might be protecting me. So am I messing with my
Right.
machine by digging up stuff that my body's going, no, you trust me, you don't want to know that stuff.
Right. And I totally agree with that. There's in codependency, one of the things that we always have to watch for is whether we're taking off somebody else's blanket of denial. And I said at the beginning, and I really, really believe it, if you're on your pink cloud, you're in your second, third, fourth year, enjoy it. But if there are things that are preventing you from having your life, in my case, I was addicted to the validation of other people to the point where I put my needs behind everybody else's. If that's the kind of life that you're living, then I think it's worth it to walk through it. And you start small. You start with the belief systems that you have today as an adult, and you start challenging them. It is one of the most natural things that we can do. And what we start to learn is that just as we finally surrendered to letting go of the drink and have a chance, because we're walking through the door with sobriety, we're walking through the door with clarity, with a clear head, we will do the same when it comes to letting go of these old belief systems that are kicking us, in the shins.
I'm gonna hit you up on expectations in a second, but I'm gonna do a shameless plug. I
Oh,
know
sure.
that's not why you're here, but
Oh, of me.
well, why is there for someone to say, "Wow, I want to learn more"? Are you the type of person to call
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, Kristina, I don't know, but let's start digging"? And is
Yes.
that something that you do for
Well, I've been
people?
doing it for 20 plus years, and yes, I work with individuals, because trauma is so, individualized, and because the work is very, very, gentle and tedious and somewhat scary. I
Mm-hmm.
generally work with one-on-one, depending on what they want. You can do either a single session with me. My first session is always free, and you can do a follow-up session, or you can enroll in a program. And I walk people through their codependency that's keeping them from enjoying the life that they want. And we start working on healing some of these things that have led us to this life we have. So absolutely, I'm really always very happy to talk to somebody, and if I can't help them, then I find a resource that can.
I think I'm going to put all the links up there, but KristinaDennis.com is
Yes.
pretty with a K, and you're there, and that should be up on the links. But I'll make sure that. So I
And
want to go back to expectations and tell me how this would fit in. One of my problems when I realized that I had problems, I'm an instant gratification kind of guy. If I'm hungry, I go for fast food. I don't care that it's bad for me. It's there, it's warm, it's cheap, it's free, it's right. I don't want to spend the time to cook. I've got emotional issues. Well, you know what? That can of beer is right there. It's cheap, it's cold. I can get it
mhm,
at any corner and it works.
mhm,
The instant gratification, I want it all solved right now.
right.
I scare myself as far as my expectations of fixing problems. I want it fixed, all of it fixed now. I just realized that my trauma is this, or this. I want it fixed now. So, and if I don't get it immediately, I'm going to say, well, I'll give up.
Mm,
So I'm struggling with the setting small expectations
mhm,
of what to fix because wait a minute, Christine, I'm going to, I've scheduled an appointment in an hour. I'm going to go skipping out of your office whistling because
mhm.
all my trauma's fixed. And
Yep,
yeah, exactly. So what are reasonable expectations?
sure.
How do you control that? Because someone like me is going to get frustrated without an immediate fix.
Well, we always within a session lead with a win because that is absolutely every human's need is to look at the progress they make. And one of the things that we do when we are codependent or still in really difficult relationships or sober is we forget to see how much progress we had and we've already accomplished. So I use the person's uh, progress to show why they may want to step into another area and continue to do this. I just had a client who kept having the same negative belief about a certain situation in her life where she was just beating herself up and beating herself up and she simply needed to talk to somebody else who had done the thing that she was talking about and had walked away from it. She needed to know that she was one of many. She needed to know it was okay. And then once I have a first session with people, I do a 21-day check-in with them through Marco Polo app because that's the easiest way to
Mm-hmm.
connect, just to make sure that they are implementing the action plan that we put together and they are, making sure that they're having connection with other people and they are doing the action step that we came up with. It's one phone call, one Zoom call, and then a half an hour follow up in 3 weeks, just to make sure that people are going okay. Now, if you want to work a very intense program, and let's say you really want to walk through it, then we go slow. We make sure that we have lots of progress. We make sure that we're taking care of ourselves both physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I have a spiritual contract that I make with people. And generally, yes, it's painful, but the anticipation is much worse than the participation. And that's definitely the truth.
I've always I haven't gone through a lot of loss,
Mhm.
and it's a matter of time. I understand that, but I always wonder how people can ever be happy again when
Mm,
they have
tremendous loss.
that. And someone just put in the chat, and I'm not going to print, but childhood molestation.
Mm, yes.
I used to think that dealing with it meant uh, being able to, oh, I completely forgot, it's gone, it's out of my, no, it's not going to be gone. Just like um, losing a loved one,
Mhm.
we're never going to forget. We're
Mm-mm.
always going to miss a loved one.
Right.
So what is the hope, the outcome that we're because I assume your son still has
Yeah.
issues that he deals with. You still have memories of childhood thing.
Mhm.
What is life like when this is dealt with properly?
Was such a good question, and I hope I'm dealing with it properly. I feel like I have such a great life that's, it used to be in pieces and now it's full of peace, and that means so much to me that I protect it. I would tell people that are trying to figure out how you forgive the unforgivable, how you live with something that seems unlivable, is that it comes with acceptance. Acceptance that for whatever reason that happened and you're not going to be able to change it. And there are certainly ways to go around it. Think about, okay, let's say you're biblical, Genesis 50:20. What you meant for evil, God used for good. Or if you're in the 12 steps, they talk about the promises. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. I can tell you, because I wanted it to be gone. It was the acceptance that it was never going to be gone, and then the ability to learn to live with it. Then take what I learned, which was resilience, forgiveness, kindness, compassion toward other people and the children that are inside of those people, and make that turn out for good. Make that be something that is a light in this world. And that will get rid of the darkness.
I, it starts that you it's surprised you actually start you kind of got through some of the thickness here because it started to make sense, just like the some people know my story with my daughter. The last, I guess, night that I really drank, I think it was, I hope it was, but um, was a tough night. She had to come get me. There was
Mm,
knocking on the window. There was a lot of, and what I've said is I purchased a buzz, and the buzz was gone in a couple hours. But I also purchased a memory that my daughter's going to carry with her for the rest of her life that I can never take away.
no.
But that's never going to go away. But
Mm,
my dealing with it has created a new joy or a new happiness that's come out of that.
mhm.
So
Exactly.
maybe is that, I guess, is that,
It's exactly what it is. They say in the Bible, double for your trouble. And that's exactly like if you had not had that experience. So, what your daughter's going to do is she's going to look and see how hard it was for dad and how dad overcame it. And she's also going to see dad taking what was a humiliating, demoralization kind of action and occurrence, and he's going to turn it into good for strangers. And that's why we have to give it back. We can teach the people that come behind us that yes, you can live with it. Yes, there's reconciliation available. Yes, there's a reward, if you stay the course and keep working at it. Um, I think that, I will share that when I was drinking alcoholically, I caused a lot of damage.
yeah, I was going to say, there's a lot of people that are listening are going to hear this,
Mhm,
have hurt a lot of people.
mhm.
There's a lot
And
of anger.
right. And what you have to understand, that's why working with people and having either a sponsor, a mentor, a therapist, a coach, what you end up doing is walking through it and you get right-sized and humble and you let other people have their feelings about it. And you let them have it to a point, not so that you are falling down beneath them and, living in humiliation. That's not what this is about. This is about redemption. You were sick. I was sick. And now I am better. And so I will make amends. I will make a living amends always to my child, to people. I tell the truth now. And I can promise you the damage eventually gets handled. You get to pay the bill the more you're around, and something better will come in place of it. When I intervene, when I perform an intervention, when I help a family facilitate an intervention, it was the very fact that Johnny was alcoholic that the family got together and walked through their secrets and started healing. It was that thing that they thought was the worst thing that is actually the catalyst to the best thing that's happening with that family. And I see it happen all the time. It just takes more time. And that instant gratification scenario has to be replaced with spiritual maturity. And so that's why love it, don't love it, the one day at a time really holds true, whether you're in a 12-step program or not, because life really is just one day at a time.
Well, that goes back to my expectations, because I want it all.
Mhm.
I want to fix the things. I want my daughter to not be angry with me. I want
Mhm.
her to be, and I can't get that in a day.
You
And
can't.
that's frustrating to me.
And she will need to walk through some of her own trauma being raised in an alcoholic home. And that is something that could take you out. But I pray for people and beg them to stay in and show their children how to do it differently and show what it means to be loved, regardless of not doing everything 100% of the time correct. You treat your children, you treat the people in your life with respect and kindness, you make amends, and then you move on. And you are a living example. And that's the gift.
Yeah, I mean, I can see. My wife she made a comment a year ago that she's waited 30 years to have the conversations that we're having now.
Mhm.
Um,
It's worth it.
I don't run from. I engage now versus either throwing a joke at it or hiding from it, because it was just hard, you
I
know.
know. I know. And because I'm 25 years away from some of those behaviors, I can feel less about them. But I'll tell you, there's still some stuff that shows up in my life. If I went back into my family of origin, I would the family system would be like, okay, you're the scapegoat, and don't you get out of being the scapegoat. And to some degree, you have to work that out with a professional, work that out with your sponsor about exactly how you're going to enter into. We're coming up on the holidays. What is your plan when you walk in? Is it you're going to be of service? You're going to have commitments to people outside of your family, that you do check-ins. You're going to make sure you're fed. You're going to make sure that your side of the street is clean. And if somebody wants to continue to bring up ancient history, call me. I have a list of things that you can say back to them to
Yeah,
stop.
because I can see myself. I'm going to make this huge dinner for everyone, and I'm going to get gifts. I'm going to decorate, and then when everyone is not just going, right back to miracle, I'm going to say, I tried, and I'll get frustrated.
Mhm.
And well, it's your story is, people do come into our lives. Some people we want to see, and others are kind of just a nuisance. And the hold on, there's someone here. Speaking of nuisance, how are you
Hey,
doing, Peggy?
look at that pretty lady. Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you. We just had a nice chat.
I watched the whole thing. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Alice is watching too.
oh, hi, Mama.
So
Thank you. Thank you so
yeah.
much.
Peggy, I invited you on because I know that you just wrote your book, and there's a lot of hurt in there. And I think when Kristina was talking, a lot of the things she was saying, I just saw your story a little bit, and mine, but I know yours is very vocal, and I just wanted to I wanted to bring you on and just hear how this resonates with you and your journey right now.
I just text Alice, who was a really good friend of Kristina and mine as well, and Kristina's been, I've met her through Stacey Danford's The Grateful Brain, and I know Kristina does a lot of work with her. The science, well, I don't even know what I want to say other than I just wrote a piece for my newsletter on adverse childhood experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like your talk tonight mirrored that, right?
Okay.
That there are about 10 adverse childhood experiences we experience from ages 0
Mm-hmm.
and maybe before in your case, to 17. And I've read The Body Keeps the Score. I've always, what you said, I'm going to actually post this next week. My life used to be in pieces and now it's full of peace.
Mm.
You can feel that around you. And I think about your mom, and this is the social worker in me, and your grandmother, and your whole family, and knowing that the compassion comes, and I see it in you, from knowing that they have also experienced so much trauma.
Absolutely.
That is the way that it allows us to forgive them, because that people aren't born that way.
No. Kristina, if my daughter hadn't forgiven me, let's just that situation, could I find peace if it's not a two-way, if we're not both healing?
I think you can. I really do. If you've done everything you can do, then the most loving thing you can do for them is let them have their process.
Yeah.
And if you love your children unconditionally, that means you love them even when they don't love you. And it is very, very painful. But, for me, people showed up for me in the mother capacity that helped me heal. And then when I became a mother, I healed because I realized how distraught and little she was. If you think about it, she was 21 years old, and I grew up in the same home she did, except it was probably a little bit even better because she was the first child. And I can really see, if I was separated from my son, if I was told I couldn't have him, if I was told that, I had to pretend like I was his sister, it would have broken my heart. And I understand now why she stayed away. I wish she would come back, but there isn't anything more that I can do. So out of love and acceptance that this is what was meant to be, because out of her absence, so many beautiful things happened. And so what was meant for evil ended up being for good. And
is the guilt that I feel over what I did to my child a trauma?
You can keep traumatizing yourself with that, yes. And you need to eventually say that's not helping her at all. Because every time you think about it, you can re-traumatize yourself every about 90 seconds, the emotion goes out. This is something that we learned from Stacey. Within 90 seconds, you're no longer thinking about it. And the reason why it feels like it's not going away, whether it's a broken heart, is because we are re-injuring ourselves. And if it's preventing you, Jeff, from being the father that you need to be today for her, which it can be in some parents, then it is not serving her or you. And the most loving thing you could do, the most parental thing you could do, is to love yourself.
And that's our relationship is actually pretty good, but loving myself, that is, you're asking a tall order. I'll forgive you and I'll forgive everyone 100-fold before I'll ever begin to forgive myself.
I wish I'd worn my shirt. Self-love is an action, is something that I tell people. So, and this is where fake it till you make it really does apply. You cannot think your way into right action. You have to act your way into right thinking. And this is why when I work with somebody, we start with the spiritual contract of taking care of yourself. For 21 days, you have to call into me and tell me what you did for yourself and what you plan to do for yourself, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And that allows people to get that straight, their feet on the ground, inside their bodies, so that they have access to their prefrontal cortex so that they can heal. And if we don't do that, then it's impossible. It's like the difference between, you said I eat bad food sometimes, but so here's the thing. I don't think food has morality, but it's the difference between having cotton candy and an amazing piece of homemade, delicious cheesecake. They're both sugar, right? But one is going to go away in 20 seconds. One is going to dissolve in your mouth. The other one, you're going to have memories involved with it, love. You're going to have all kinds of emotion around it. Stick with that one. That's the one that you need. So what is the Cadillac version of you taking care of yourself? And it seems it's confusing. And I'll tell you, I know this as a special needs mom. Our children can no longer be responsible for our emotions. They are not responsible for us feeling guilty, and they will feel it. They will feel it regardless. My son, I thought I was taking care of him completely. I'd sleep in a twin bed in his room. I had to lock the door because otherwise he would get out. I used to have to drive him 200, 300 miles a night so he wouldn't hit himself. I didn't know if I should take him to the hospital, be sedated some nights. It was so freaking scary. And I thought for sure that I was taking care of him. His father and I did split. That happens a lot in special needs cases. And I met the husband I'm married to now. And I remember the first night that he moved in. We made a big show of it. We took our time, Peggy. You'll be very proud of us. We did it right. And we made a big show with him in his own bedroom with Star Wars characters and a big brand new California king bed. And he came down the hallway because he'd been sleeping in the same room as me his whole life. And he looked at me and he looked at Kelly. And I saw relief. And then he went into his own room.
Wow.
And I realized that I thought I was taking care of him, but he also thought he was taking care of me. And so that solidified my message, which is we have to take care of ourselves in order for our children not to have to be responsible. And I tell people self-care is the way to have a good relationship. Self-care is the way to be a good parent. It cannot be overestimated or relegated to pedicures.
Self-care feels jealous, or not jealous. Self-care feels selfish to me.
Yes, it's so not. What you're doing is
because who am I to take care of myself when I've got this child or this situation? I come last.
Yes, and you know what? It's celebrated. Selfless mother. It's completely celebrated, and we need to change that because it's not doing our children any favors. My son does not need to be responsible for me. He will think he is. Those of you who have marriage broken up, if you have, you're a single mom, do not triangulate your children. Do not make them the spouse. And we don't mean to do it, but it's very easy for us to do it. They aren't the little mans at the house. Your daughter isn't your wife, and you have to provide self-care for you so you can get through those traumas.
Yeah, I definitely was my mother's therapist. That was probably one of the most damaging things. So I do feel, however, that getting sober and taking care of myself, and I don't think I've ever taken this good of care of myself because I feel inside that I deserve it. I feel like I'm healing my mother too.
Isn't it true how that happens?
I feel like, I'm 69 and I can finally, at this time, and I wrote about it too, but I've never even taken out my mom's Christmas decorations. She's a very talented person. Very unhappy and very crazy, but sometimes, I can get a feel for things out now and talk. I can, hey mom, look, it does not look nice here. without any of those feelings I had before. For some reason, I blamed everything on my mother, and that's a whole other, my dad didn't do any of it, even though he did come home with, other people's lipstick on his
Well, we could have a lot of conversations
yeah,
about.
we could do that, but I just want to thank you, Kristina. You've just been such an important part in my life. And I remember early on, you said, I really believe in you. And I'm still having a bit of imposter syndrome around, like what's happening right now. But I just love you. And thanks, Jeff, for letting me come on to tell Kristina how I feel. This was a beautiful interview. It was one of the best I think Jeff's done.
Thank you.
You're such a beautiful person.
Thank
Amazing.
you. And I do believe in you.
I'll put your links up, Kristina.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some people that'll have, but great. Thank you very much for just opening up.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Anytime that anybody wants to discuss, I'm just one of many people, right? One of many who've made it through.
Both of you stay on. We've got an interview Saturday morning with Ketsia. We're going to talk about her journey via pen that has really helped her heal. So anyways, but we'll see y'all. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.